Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into how a devastating medical hurdle actually became the inciting incident that forged one of the absolute greatest legends in football history. We so often look at global icons and just kind of assume their path to the top was, well, paved with ease and natural physical dominance. But we're unpacking a source that reveals a very different story. We're going to look at the immense struggle that started it all and how a young boy's determination totally rewrote the script of his life.
The old saying goes, every great hero faces a challenge. And for Lionel Messi, his biggest opponent wasn't another team or a fierce rival or even the pressure of a massive final match. No, his greatest adversary was actually a severe medical condition that threatened to end his entire future in the sport before it had even truly begun. It wasn't happening out there on the pitch. It was happening right inside his own body.
Section 1. The Smallest Giant. Childhood in Rosario.
So, picture this. By the age of 10, young Lionel was already recognized as one of the most exceptional young footballers in his hometown of Rosario, Argentina. Anyone who watched him play knew they were looking at something incredibly special. I mean, he possessed just unbelievable vision and dribbling skills. But, despite that extraordinary talent on the ball, his physical reality painted a much tougher picture. Because while his teammates were hitting growth spurts, getting taller and stronger, Lionel remained much smaller, falling visibly behind the other kids his age.
Section 2. A devastating diagnosis. A threat to the dream.
Now, naturally, his family hoped he was just a late bloomer, right? But doctors soon delivered some really heartbreaking news that put his professional dreams in serious jeopardy. Lionel was diagnosed with growth hormone deficiency. Basically, this meant his body simply couldn't produce enough growth hormone on its own. And without years of proper, consistent medical intervention, his physical development would completely stall. For a kid whose entire universe revolved around becoming a professional footballer, you can imagine, this diagnosis felt entirely devastating.
Section 3. Turning size into strength. Motivation, not excuse. Let's be honest, most kids, and frankly, most adults, might have just surrendered their dreams upon hearing that kind of life-altering news. But Lionel? He never stopped smiling when a football was at his feet. Instead of throwing in the towel, he trained with absolute, relentless determination every single day. Dribbling, passing, ball control, shooting, he obsessed over the fundamentals. He made this conscious, silent decision that his tiny stature was never ever going to become an excuse. Instead of a limitation, his size became his ultimate source of motivation.
In fact, it's pretty amazing how he adapted. He actually weaponized his lower center of gravity. You see, whenever bigger, stronger players tried to physically push him off the ball, he simply learned to move faster. Whenever defenders underestimated him because of how small he looked, he just proved them wrong with sheer agility and skill. He took a perceived physical weakness and actively transformed it into his absolute greatest athletic asset. Talk about flipping the script.
Section 4. The cost of a dream. Financial reality.
But here's the catch. While his work ethic was completely unmatched, talent alone couldn't pay the medical bills for those mandatory hormone injections. The reality of his medical condition was about to violently collide with the harsh reality of economics. The required treatment cost a staggering $1,000 every single month. That was just an impossible financial burden for his hardworking parents. His dad worked tirelessly, his mom did absolutely everything she could. But despite their immense sacrifices, his future remained completely up in the air. I want you to just pause for a second and really feel the sheer weight of that financial devastation. Imagine it, every single month bringing another agonizing hurdle for the family. They were forced into this impossible reality where their son's health, his development, and his entire future hung entirely by a thread, all because of a number on a medical bill. How do you even begin to keep a dream alive under that kind of pressure? Well, this kicked off an incredibly heartbreaking sequence of false hopes. First, local clubs admired his amazing talent, sure, but none of them had the financial resources to cover those expensive treatments. Then, this massive opportunity popped up with River Plate, one of Argentina's absolute biggest clubs in Buenos Aires. They recognized his exceptional ability and they really wanted him. But, tragically, the transfer collapsed entirely. Why? Because the treatment costs made reaching an agreement impossible. Even Argentina's biggest football institutions just couldn't afford to save his dream. Time was literally running out. Yet despite all these relentless rejections and his dwindling time, Lionel's mindset was just
extraordinary because while so many people looked at him and saw a small, fragile boy with medical bills that were just way too high, Lionel only saw opportunity. His belief that hard work could overcome any obstacle, it never wavered. Even on the absolute hardest days, when doors just kept slamming shut in his face, his dream remained so much stronger than his fear. Section 5. A call from Spain. Hope arrives.
You know, sometimes that unyielding belief is literally the only difference between ordinary people and future legends. Because just when everything seemed entirely impossible, a miraculous rescue arrived from thousands of kilometers away. A legendary football club in Spain had been hearing the rumors. Whispers had made their way across the ocean about this tiny boy in Argentina with extraordinary, once-in-a-generation talent. That club was FC Barcelona, and they stepped in to offer him a lifeline, the absolute opportunity of a lifetime.
But as with all great stories, chasing his ultimate football destiny came with a massive personal price. Accepting this lifeline meant moving all the way across the world. It meant leaving behind family, friends, his hometown, and absolutely everything he had ever known in Argentina just to start over in a totally foreign country as a young teenager. That is a heavy, heavy choice for a kid. One decision, one flight. That was all it took to set in motion a chain of events that would change football history forever. And it really forces us to ask ourselves, when faced with a medical hurdle that completely grounds you and an opportunity that requires you to leave your entire world behind, would you have the courage to take that leap? This small boy did, proving once and for all that sometimes the greatest giants aren't measured by their height, but by the size of their dream. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer. It really makes you wonder, what impossible hurdles are you letting hold you back right now?